The main reason it matters is because the act of putting our story on paper teaches us who we are, what our life is about, what we're here for, why we matter, what makes our life so significant, what's the most interesting thing about us. One of the things that I noticed is that we have a lot more agency in resolving our stories than we think we do.
Welcome to the show today. You're in the right place because today we're learning about the surprising benefits of writing or sharing our stories with another Allie, my friend Allie Fallon, who is walking us through some really surprising research out there about all of the health benefits of writing our story. And after we talk with Allie, of course, it's time for coaching. We are in the Success Secrets series, and today I'm giving you a few of my best tips about how to deal with the guilt that creeps up in our lives. And I guarantee it is a different take than you have ever heard about guilt. You are really going to love this one. If you're somebody who beats themselves up or feels guilt about a lot of little things, today could be life-changing for you. Now, the final segment of the show, I'm bringing you two things that I love. One is a movie and one is a TV series. So, two things that I've loved in the last couple of months. And this is your chance. It is free coaching call season. A couple of times a year, I like to give away free coaching calls when my schedule allows. And this is one of those times. If you are a business owner, an executive, an entrepreneur, I would love the chance to be able to help you. I love to wake up in the morning and know that sometime during the day, I'm going to have a call with a client. She's going to have a problem. I'm going to fix it, and her world's going to be better. I have the greatest job in the world. I will be coaching until I'm 105 and people just take my phone away from me. I love it. If you have ever wondered what it's like to be personally coached, to get high-level coaching, this is your chance. And people often don't realize the importance of coaching. Everyone who is successful gets coaching. A lot of people just don't talk about it. I have a coach. It's like how a therapist has a therapist because no one can truly do it for themselves. And when we feel like we're in a place where, oh, it's fine, I don't need any help, I got everything together, I don't need anyone speaking into my life, I don't need anyone helping me succeed and reach my goals, that's when we're in the most danger. So if you have never experienced coaching, I want you to apply. Go to allieworthington.com/free coaching. We're going to go through all the applications and pick, I think, 5 winners this summer. So I'm super, super excited. I'm going to have all the coaching calls in June. So again, if you're an executive, a business owner, an entrepreneur, go ahead and apply so we can get you scheduled. It's allieworthington.com/free coaching. Now, without further ado, here's my friend, Allie. Okay, Allie, tell us why we should never go on a reality TV show.
Well, I love me some reality TV. So this isn't really a comment about reality TV, but my brother, who worked behind the scenes on a reality TV show for many years, a popular show, I flew down to LA in my 20s to go visit him and just kind of see his world down there. And I was telling him how cool I thought his job was, how awesome this was that he got to do this. He was hanging out with these reality TV stars. I thought that was just the coolest thing in the world. And I was like, maybe someday I could be on a reality show. And my brother is notoriously very, very laid back. He's not the kind of brother who was like stalking me on first dates or, like threatening my boyfriends or whatever. He just like kind of stood back and let me live my life. But in this particular case, I knew he was serious because he like came in hot and was just like, listen to me. Don't ever, 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 ever be on a reality TV show. Because he said, what you do when you do that is you give someone else permission to frame your story for you. And there's 1,000 different ways you could tell any story in your life. But what you're doing is you're giving the keys away to let somebody else tell that story for you. And that advice really stuck with me because, it's not really so much about reality TV, but it's about the hundreds of ways that we give away the keys to someone else to allow them to tell our story for us.
So good. I did get a pitch once to be a person on a show. I had never seen it before, Below Deck. I guess
Okay.
people are on a ship.
I've seen the
Yeah, and
ads.
I was like, never in a
Yeah.
million years would I want to be painted in some direction. I could, I mean, I
Yeah.
would do it anyway, but it
Yeah.
it was hilarious being invited. So yeah, insanity.
Yeah.
But speaking of telling stories and not being painted in the corner, you are a huge proponent in people empowering themselves to tell their story, to write their story.
Hmm.
Why does writing our
Yeah.
story matter?
So many reasons. The main reason it matters is because the act of putting our story on paper teaches us who we are, what our life is about, what we're here for, why we matter, what makes our life so significant, what's the most interesting thing about us. Now, beyond that, as we share that story, it also allows us to connect with other people who are in our lives, to really feel and experience that connection and the love that has always been there. And there are a thousand other reasons, making a contribution to the world, our specific, unique contribution that's unique to us comes is born out of that act of better understanding our lives and our story. But really it all starts at the place of really seeing clearly, who am I? What makes me matter? Why is my life important in this giant, chaotic cosmos that we're living in? And the act of putting your life experiences into a framework like a narrative structure can really show you your life in a different kind of way than you've ever seen it before.
I love that. I was listening to a researcher talking about healing. When people have been through trauma or people have been
Mhm.
through any difficult experience, who hasn't?
Yeah.
And he was talking about how people can go to therapy and use talk therapy and use all the tools, and that's a very positive thing. We're very pro therapy on the show. But there's a huge benefit for people actually writing out what they've been through and processing it. And the more they process it, the more they write it out, the more they process it, and the faster it heals. When you were researching everything, what did you find?
There's a massive body of research that I didn't even know existed that talks about the power of a practice of writing to heal our bodies and our minds and our emotional lives.
Yeah.
One of the pieces of data that stuck out to me the most was that people who write regularly, and they define regularly by writing 4 days in a row for 20 minutes at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you have to write every day for the rest of your life, but 4 days in a row for 20 minutes at a time, those who wrote regularly saw a 50% improvement in their immune system, their ability to fight off upper respiratory infections and flu. So I think one of the reasons that that piece of data stood out to me so strongly is because we're talking about like a physical impact on your biology, on your cells. So this is not just like, I don't know why. Part of me feels like the emotional part can be kind of woo woo. It's like, well, of course, writing is helpful to better understand your inner life or your inner emotions. But for someone like me, I'm an Enneagram 4, but I have a strong 3 wing. And for someone like me, I think sometimes I need there to be like physical proof. I need there to be like data that shows that this is going to measurably improve my life. And I uncovered this research during the time of the pandemic too, which made it seem extra, kind of gave it an extra oomph, because it's like, okay, well, we're all worried about getting sick. We're all trying to bolster our immune systems. We're all taking vitamin D and zinc for the first time in our lives, And it's like, hey, writing for 20 minutes a day can improve your immune system. It can help you fight off these viruses that we all come into contact with on a daily basis. So there's a lot more research than that that's also really compelling, but that's always the first piece that I start with.
I love that. That was huge for me. I am someone that writes for work. So I write when I'm writing a
Yeah.
book, I write when it's a project, but I have through the years forgotten the art of writing for me as well,
Yeah.
and I'm getting back into this year. And it's mainly because of all the data behind it. And of course, it makes you a better
Mhm.
writer. But
Sure.
sometimes you can get so busy with deliverables, you forget to do things for yourself. So if someone's
Yeah.
listening and they've never written their story, they've never examined their life in that way, what's a good starting point?
A great starting point is just to start by telling what happened. So
Mm-hmm.
people will ask for prompts, and I do have prompts that I can give, but the number one prompt that I give is what happened. It's like, if you want to tell about an event from your life, maybe the event is a significant event from the past, like losing a loved one or going through a divorce or, battling an illness of some kind. And if you want to talk about that event, just pretend like you're sitting across the table from a very close friend or family member, someone who you have a lot of trust in, and just tell them the whole story from start to finish. Even just that, without doing any organization at all, can be incredibly cathartic. It doesn't have to be interesting to a reader. There doesn't have to be a great hook. It doesn't have to be divided into chapters. This doesn't have to turn into a memoir. A publisher doesn't need to care about it in order for it to be very healing for you. Now, what I teach in the book, Write Your Story, is a framework that helps you take what happened and put it into a framework that does make it very interesting from the beginning. And it teaches you how to position yourself as the protagonist of the story, the main character of the story, and some other things that are also really helpful in healing. But the first step always is just getting the information out of your brain, out of your body, and onto paper. And even that step is incredibly cathartic.
Oh, I love that. Okay, let's dive into making yourself the protagonist of the story, because I love that concept. Tell us a little bit about that.
So one of the first things I teach in the book is this concept of moving yourself into the position of the hero of the story. And people have a lot of resistance around this because I think in particular because of the word hero. I use the word hero because it's easier to say and easier to talk about than the word protagonist. Protagonist is kind of the literary term and hero is like a more colloquial term. But I think one of the reasons why people have a really hard time embracing themselves as the hero of the story is because we have this cultural association with the word hero. Like a hero is a person who puts their life on the line to save someone else or give someone else something that they needed. And they're like, I've never given away a kidney for someone else. I'm not really a hero. But a hero in the literary sense isn't really necessarily heroic like that. In fact, the hero of the story isn't heroic until like the last 5% of the story. The hero encounters some kind of problem inside of the story that they can't solve. They're up against these massive obstacles that they don't know how to overcome. And the tension of that problem and that obstacle builds and builds and builds throughout the story. The hero continually fails, continually falls flat on their face, continually doesn't know the right next step to take. And then at the very, very end of the story, when the tension is the highest, the hero finally figures this thing out for the first time in the entire story. The story resolves and then the story's over. So the hero in the story is only really heroic for like 5 seconds out of the story. And then they move on to a new story where they're up against a new kind of obstacle that they also don't know how to solve. So I think sometimes shifting that can help us see how to put ourselves in the position of the hero. But the reason why this is so massively important is because the hero in the story, from a literary standpoint, is the only person who can move the plot forward. So putting ourselves in the position of the hero of a story teaches us about the agency we have in our own stories to move the plot forward. We don't always have control over the external circumstances. We don't have control over what people do or don't do. We don't have control over whether we get the job or whether the illness is healed. But we do have a remarkable amount of agency when we put ourselves in the position of the hero and realize the only way that this story moves forward is when I put one foot in front of the other. And once you start to see yourself like that, it's a really, really empowering position to stand in. You stop seeing yourself as the victim in your story and start seeing yourself as the hero of the story. And even though you're up against this impossible obstacle that you don't know how to solve, and you might fall flat on your face a bunch of times, eventually you do come to a point of resolution. And it's your job to resolve the story and decide how you want it to end. So it doesn't always end exactly the way that we want it to end, but we do get to choose at least what the meaning is that we make on the story.
I love that. And I think it can really strengthen our faith to document our stories, because we can look for these places where God showed up. We can tell these different portions of, yes, I'm the protagonist, I'm the hero, I'm pushing the story forward, and look how I partnered with God. Look at how God stepped in. And I think in our lives sometimes we're standing on the sidelines going, I just can't wait for God to move. And God's like, hey, I'm telling you to move. Let's move it forward. I'm here with you, but let's move this thing forward. And I love documenting what he's done and what he's taught me and what I've overcome that I never could have done before. Never in a million years. And I only remember it by documenting it and telling those stories. I mean, we've been doing it since the beginning of time.
It's really so powerful when you start to put your story down on the page. You just see it in a different way. And there's a character inside of a storytelling framework who's called the guide. Mm-hmm. This is like the Yoda character in the story. Yeah. And I love teaching this part because it comes right after teaching hero. People are like, I don't want to be the hero of my own story. That feels so weird. But then when I teach guide, they're like, oh, now I understand. The hero is having a hard time figuring out a way forward, and a guide comes into the picture and says, have you tried this yet? Yeah. Or what if you thought about it this way? Or look at it from this vantage point instead. And we start to see how many people and resources and how much support and just angels and God and you know, like all of these guides who have come into our story to help support us to the logical ending of the story that it really wasn't about the hero figuring out a way to save the day. It was the guide. The guide is the more heroic character in
Totally.
the story.
Love it. Okay, so say someone is thinking about writing their story. They know the benefits, the
Mhm.
spiritual benefits, the emotional benefits, the health benefits that we've learned now, but they don't think that they are interesting. What do you have to say?
Sure. Okay, so this is a common feeling that a lot of people have when they sit down to tell their story. And I will tell you, it's kind of helpful to hear that it's not just the average person who says, "Oh, I'm not a writer, my story's not that interesting." It's actually like I've spent most of my career working with authors who are published and have book deals and agents and all the things. And they'll come to me to have me help them put together a memoir. And they will say to me, "I'm not a writer. I don't have an interesting story." And I'm like, "You've literally been paid six figures by a publisher because they think you have an interesting story." So the reason I say that is because I feel like it takes the pressure off. It's like, oh, this is the human condition. This is an expected feeling of imposter syndrome or a fear that's going to show up. I like to tell authors, this is your initiation into the process. So expect it to come. Expect that feeling like my story's not interesting. And the other piece that I point out is that every story is interesting if it's told in the right way. And there are certain moments when we do this intuitively. Like you might come to work on a Monday morning and be like, "You'll never guess what happened to me over the weekend." And what you're doing is opening a story loop. That's a hook at the beginning of a story because people are like, "What? Tell me what?" You know? So when you know how to do that, you can make almost any story interesting, even if the details of the story are not all that interesting. When you lay them out in an interesting way, you can hook someone from the very beginning and you make it interesting. And by the way, when you make your story interesting to a reader, you also make it interesting to you. So even if you never plan to share your story with anyone, but you just want to write it down, when you make your story interesting to you, you become much more engaged in your life than you were before. You start to see everything that happens to you as exciting and what's going to be around the next corner and what's going to happen on, in this aspect of my life. So it's a really great thing to become more interesting even to yourself. And as a happy byproduct, you become more interesting to other people at cocktail parties and wherever else you go. Yeah.
I love that. I will say, I notice like women, I have women friends who are influencers, like in
Yeah.
their late 20s, like they grew
Yeah.
up online. And they will text me with a hook. Like it's become natural. Like, you won't believe what happened today. And they won't tell the story.
Yeah.
And I'll be like,
You're like, now I have to, yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Tell me more.
Like,
I
like
know.
that. Like you're so good at hooks. It's not just your career.
Yes.
You're so good at hooks. You're hooking
Yeah.
me in on a
100%.
text.
It's a great skill to have because listen, when you know how to write a great hook, you know how to command human attention. And when you can command human attention, you can give people information that's really important for them. I think about this all the time because I have two toddlers, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I'm always trying to command their attention. I've got to get very good at commanding their attention because the information that I'm trying to deliver them is do not run into the street. Do you hear me? Because you will get hit by a car. They don't understand the safety risk. I do. So I need to be really good at commanding their attention so that I can deliver the information that's necessary. And the same is true for those of us who, not everybody who engages in the process of writing their story will want to share it beyond just like family and friends. Mm-hmm. But for those of us who do, for those of us who want to share our art, or we want to talk about a business, or we want to talk about this nonprofit that we run, or this amazing ministry or work that we're doing in the world, if you have something like that you want to share with other human beings, you have to learn how to command human attention so that you can deliver the information when it's necessary. Oh,
so good. Okay. I can't stop thinking about hooks. I have an open loop now. Yeah. Give us some more info on hooks. What do we need to know about them? A couple other examples. This is so fun.
Okay, so the hook of the story is just the thing that gets your reader's attention. The best way, you could literally Google how to write a hook, and there will be like 12 different, there's like a million different articles that teach you like 10 ways, 12 ways, 8 ways to write a hook. But the way that I like to teach to write a hook is really simple. It's just you have to get your reader to ask a question. So once your reader's asking a question, it's called a story question or an open story loop. You've gotten them to ask a question that their brain wants to get answered. And our brains are wired to close story loops. This is how you get caught on Instagram for 30 minutes and you're just like, wait, I was supposed to go to bed. Like, what's going on? Why am I still awake? Or even Netflix, right? Like the writers of our favorite series are very good at opening story loops at the end of an episode. In fact, my trick that I've learned is if I don't want to get stuck, I turn an episode off halfway through because there aren't as many open story loops halfway through you turn an episode off and you watch halfway point to halfway point, then you don't get so stuck. But yes, if the writers of the show have done their job, then when an episode to your show ends, you're like, I have to see the next episode. I need to know what happens.
That is so
So
smart.
this is what a good hook does, is it gets your reader to ask a question. So there are a bunch of different ways to do that, but it's why a statement like, you'll never guess what happened to me over the weekend, is a good hook, because what question is the person you're talking to asking? What? Tell me what? Tell me the story. What? So even just the hook of what happened next that's a great hook. So it's like, it doesn't have to be all that complicated. You can just say, well, first I was at the grocery store, and then guess what after that, and each time that there's a next step in the story, you're opening a story loop that engages your reader.
I love it. Okay, this has been so fun. Last question on this topic. What was the most surprising thing that you learned when you were preparing to write this book and you were researching? What did you not expect?
Oh, my answer is clear as day. Okay, the most surprising thing I learned, and I even say this in the book, I say that when I first started teaching about story frameworks, I would say that with personal stories, we don't always get to decide how our story ends. When you write a screenplay or you write a book or you write a fiction, whatever, you get to decide as the author how the story ends. And with personal stories, it's different. We don't get to decide how the story ends. And that's how I taught it in the beginning. And now, as I was writing the book, I started to disagree with myself. Part of this is because I also started teaching workshops called Write Your Story workshops. And we had, 450 people or something come over the course of a couple of years to these workshops to work through their personal stories using this framework as a way to kind of build out the content for the book. And one of the things that I noticed is that we have a lot more agency in resolving our stories than we think we do. Because most personal stories resolve when the internal problem resolves rather than the external problem. We think that in order for a story to resolve, it's like, I've got to get the girl, got to get the guy, get the girl, get the relationship, whatever. I got to get the job. I got to get the $1 million in my bank account. I got to get the 7-figure business, whatever it is. But really, personal stories resolve when we decide how we would like them to resolve. And when you can start to see your story from that objective perspective, when you are watching your life story as if it were a movie and you're like, what would be the most interesting way for this to resolve? A lot of times the most interesting way for a story to resolve doesn't have anything to do with the bow being tied up perfectly and things coming perfectly together. Sometimes that happens, but it's not always the most interesting way for the story to resolve. The most interesting way for the story to resolve is for the hero to become different at the end of the story than they were at the beginning. And that's the telltale sign that a story has finished, that there's been a resolution, is the hero is a different person now than they were at the beginning of the story. And a lot of times when the hero becomes different, the external problems resolve themselves. Sometimes they resolve themselves by just going away.
Okay, that is very cool. And I love it how you say, I used to teach this, and then I learned this, and now it's completely different. Because in my opinion, that is the sign of someone who is super intelligent, someone who can go, I used to believe this, but now I believe that. Right? Like, we're open to new experiences. We're open to new information. I love that about you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. We know you're an Enneagram 4, so we will skip that one. You go deep into 3 wing, which I respect. Next question. What about a song you love right now?
Okay. A song I'm digging right now is called Hanging Out by Ben Rector with Kenny G on the track.
Everything Ben Rector's amazing.
It's, truly. He's the best.
Oh, that's great. Okay, I haven't heard Hanging Out. Give us a quick overview.
So the song is about, he opens the song saying, it's funny, I didn't intentionally do this, but he opens the song talking about reality TV, talking about how basically everyone I know is now a reality TV show, living in some gossip magazine.
Yep.
And he's like, but the life I'm living is not one that I would write a song about. It's just hanging out with my daughter at lunch, going on long walks, listening to the Beatles. And I just resonate with that. I have 2 little toddlers, and pre-pandemic, my life was like on a plane once a week at least. It was a very exciting life. It was all over the place. I got to meet really amazing people and do all these incredible things. And I'm grateful for that life. And my life has slowed down it's like night and day from the life I was living, before 2020, in a really great way. It's lovely. I go for long walks in the forest with my kids. I get a chai. I work for an hour or 2 a day, and it's wonderful. It's great.
I love that for you.
That song really speaks to me. Thanks.
I love that. Okay, what about a TV or movie?
I'm watching Only Murders in the Building right now. I'm in season 3 and I'm hooked. Talk about opening story
Yep.
loops. That show is like, my husband and I both, like I said, we have 2 little kids who get up very, very early in the morning. So I've been on, in the world of like going to bed at 8:45 if I can, but we have been up way too late many, many nights in a row watching Only Murders in the Building.
It is the best show. I want every show to have Martin and Steve in it. Like, why do they not get more work?
100%.
Where have they been for the past 20 years?
I
If you, I don't know, one of my kids is super into entertainment. So whenever like a new headline pops up, he'll send it to me. I know from him, season 4, like everyone keeps getting added to the cast. It is stacked. Like they have an amazing season 4 coming up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
It's going to be great.
So
okay,
excited.
that's a great choice. What about a book that you're recommending people read?
Okay, I don't know if it's fair to recommend a book when you're not 100% through it, but the book that I'm in the middle of reading right now is called Tomorrow. And it has been, I've seen it everywhere. Like everyone was reading it. And because I'm an Enneagram 4, I'm like, everyone's reading it. It's probably not that good, which is like a weird trait that I have. But I finally decided to pick it up and it is worth all the hype. It is so,
what's the premise?
So good. It's about these 2 gamers. So I think this is one of the reasons I thought I wouldn't like it, because I'm not a game person. But it's really not about their gaming and more about their relationship to each other. And it's just like so intimate and beautifully written and like complex and nuanced and layered. And it's just like the part of me that loves reading people's stories and understanding people's stories, that's like got that psychology piece, is like, I
love that.
I'm loving it.
It's been a goal for a while to make time to read more fiction. It is. I'm working in that direction. Yeah.
Same. I'm the same, actually. I mean, this is probably the first fiction book I've read it is the first one in 2024. The last fiction book I read was Lessons in Chemistry, and it was probably a year ago. It's probably March of 2023.
What about a product that's made you tell a friend they need to have it?
I'm super into, I don't know if makeup is interesting to anyone, but I'm super into the brand.
It's totally interesting. Yeah.
The new brand that I'm into for makeup is called Ilia. And I love it because I'm not a big makeup person. I don't wear a ton of makeup. And especially with 2 little kids, I don't have a lot of time to put on makeup. So Ilia has a line of like tinted moisturizers that I love, because I'll put that on every day, no matter what I'm doing. Even if I'm not like really putting makeup on, I'll just put it on as a moisturizer. And then all of the rest of their makeup, I use like a cream blush that they have, and an eyebrow pencil and a few other things. Like all their lip tints are like really natural looking, and they're great for if you want to wear makeup but not look like you're wearing makeup. So.
Oh, okay. Well, we will link it. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
What are you excited about these days?
I'm super excited about this book I have coming out. I don't know that I've ever been this excited about a book coming out. This is my 4th book that I've released of my own, and I just feel really proud of it. It feels like the capstone on work that I've been doing for 15 years. And so I'm so excited to get to share it with people. In the past, I've released stories that were very personal. And so there was a lot of like fear and trepidation around, am I being too vulnerable? Like, what are people going to think about me when they read these stories? And this book is a little bit different because it's just coming from a different vantage point. I know it's going to be very helpful for people because it's been really helpful for me. And I've gotten to test it out with all of these beautiful souls who have come to do these workshops with me over the past 3 years. And so I know I've watched it be really tangible and easy to grasp and helpful for these people. And I know it's been that way in my life. And so I'm just excited to watch it fly and see what happens.
I love that. Allie, it is great to have you back on the show. I think you are an absolute delight. You are someone that I go to when I need advice, when I am up with a writer's block. We didn't mention that in the show, but you are absolutely brilliant, and the world is a better place because you're in it. Thank you for coming on the show, and tell everyone where to find you.
Thank you so much, Allie. I'm so appreciative of you. Thank you for having me. This has been a blast. And best place to find me is probably Instagram. I'm at Allie Fallon on Instagram. And if you want to buy the book, you can also go to writeyourstory.com and find where to buy the book there. And you can download a bunch of free resources and all of that.
That's great. And everyone, she is Allie with a Y, whereas I'm Allie with an I. Even though Instagram wants to spell my name with a Y, Apparently, Instagram has voted your spelling is the right one. I'm not bitter about it all. But thank you for coming on the show. It's been great.
Thank you.
How great was she, right? You know what to do. Share this post on social media. Tag me, tag Allie Fallon, and you will be entered to win a book. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching this on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment, and you'll be entered to win a book too. I love giving away books. I feel like Oprah. You get a book, and you get a book, and you get a book. It's so fun. Okay, let's go into the coaching segment. This is a big one. This is how to quit letting guilt weigh you down. I've seen the post all over Instagram, and I'm sure you have too, that, shout from the rooftops about how you shake off the guilt and step boldly into confidence. And I'm for all those things. I want those things. But here's a little secret for you. The real magic happens when we actually start to listen to our guilt. Now, that sounds a little backwards, I know, but hang with me here. Those nagging thoughts that whisper, you're not acing it at work, or you're messing up your kids, or you're not cool enough to fit in with those people, whatever it is, they can be relentless. And our knee-jerk reaction is to slam on the brakes and silence them because they're super upsetting, and we know they're not our truth. They're just thoughts that pop up in our head. We try everything from distractions to pep talks with friends or a coach, or in an effort to remind ourselves of our worth, we do all of these different things. But here's the revelation. While the guilt itself might be wrong, it's waving a flag into something that is going on in your life. It's waving a flag, signaling that there could be something deeper that you need to explore. So take, for instance, if you thought, I'm failing at my job, right? Instead of just pushing it away and going, that's just an inaccurate thought, be curious about it. Is it really about your job performance, or could it be imposter syndrome coming up, right? Keep peeling back the layers. Maybe it's not about your job right now. Maybe it's about a past job experience that left you feeling less than, or, sometimes we do have a little bit of job trauma. When we go through something, a bad experience, it can shake our confidence of ourselves. Or maybe it is about right now, and maybe it's because you're not getting the support you need from your colleagues, right? Think about that. Just keep working to figure out what the deeper issue is. And to all the moms out there, you know how I feel about mom guilt, right? It is like being caught in a whirlwind of doubt whether we are doing well enough. If we're working, are we missing moments? Are we ruining our kids' lives? Or if we're staying home, we're worried about losing ourselves in the process. It is time to decode the message behind the guilt. I want you to ask yourself, what is going on? Why am I really feeling this way? And don't be afraid to dive deep. You know that you're doing well. You know in your heart that you're doing your best. Is it perfect? No, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you read my book, you know that doing everything perfectly would totally mess up your kids. Remember, you only have to get it right 50% of the time to be a great mom. If you are perfect and you do everything right, you're going to kneecap your kids going into the future because they won't know how to deal with imperfect people. I want you to let that confidence be your guide as you uncover the true feelings behind your feelings of guilt. Again, don't automatically assume your guilty feelings are true, but don't push them aside, right? Once we understand the real issues lying beneath those feelings of guilt, we can start to tackle them head on. So instead of muting the guilt out of just immediate feedback, it's about solving the root issue of the guilt for good. So let guilt be your compass, not your captor, okay? Your guilt sometimes is pointing you to things that matter to you but may not be getting the attention that they need. You want to approach this with curiosity and not judgment. What happens is you can assess whether these areas truly need more focus, or they can be revisited later, or maybe they shouldn't be on your priority list at all. Because remember, sometimes the expectations that we feel are more about pleasing others than fulfilling our own desires, right? In the end, remember, guilt doesn't have to be the villain in your story. Instead, let guilt uncover and address deeper feelings. By doing that, you're not only freeing yourself from guilt's grasp, but you're stepping into a more empowered and guilt-free version of life. And that's something that we can all enjoy. Okay, now what about recommendations? The first one is a movie. Now, I will say before I give the recommendation for the movie and the TV show, I know I live in a house of boys. I get it. I have very kind of male focused recommendations. I can't help it. That's the life I'm living. It's the life God gave me. So the movie is Dune 2. I think it's even better than Dune 1. I think it's amazing. If it is still playing anywhere you are, go see it in IMAX. It is quite the adventure. Really, really just phenomenal movie, beautifully shot. I loved it so much. Now, I will say, I love this mini series I'm about to tell you about even more than Dune. It's on Hulu. It's called Shogun. Shogun's a classic book. It was a mini series before. It is absolutely amazing. It is based in Japan in the 1600s. It has a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. We watched the Japanese version with English subtitles, and it is phenomenal. I love it so much. I can't recommend Shogun enough. If you're like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm a Shogun person. Just give it a shot. See what you think. See if you like it. It's a classic for a reason. It's a phenomenal story. And you know what else I think is phenomenal? You, of course. I am so glad that you're here. I'm glad that we get to spend this time together. There's so many podcasts you could be listening to. There's so many shows on YouTube that you could be watching right now, but we are spending this time together because you are learning something about you. You're learning to optimize life. You're leaning into what God has for you. And you're just making little tiny improvements bit by bit, not stressing ourselves out, not trying to change everything overnight, not letting guilt get in our way, but learning how to manage life in a really healthy and beneficial way around us. So thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for spending this time investing in you, because your success, this is why we're doing this Success Secret series. Don't ask me to say that 3 times fast. The reason we are doing this is because your success in your work and your spiritual life and your emotional health and just how you're feeling as a person, it doesn't just benefit you, it benefits everyone in your life. Your colleagues, your family, your friends, the people who look to you and you don't even know that they're looking to you. One woman who was so impactful to me in my life, the high school I went to, the pastor's wife, she had no idea. She had no idea that I was watching everything she did. And she'd give a little tip, or she'd say something over here, she'd say something there. And I remember tucking that away in my heart. Did she know the impact that she'd have on me? And there's advice that I give today that I learned 30 something years from her. And she had no idea that I was listening so well. Probably not, because I was an obnoxious high schooler, right? So you may not know the people who are watching you and learning from you and tucking little bits of information in their hearts that's going to come out to bless the world. So keep leaning into what you're doing. Keep stepping up, keep showing up, keep loving well, because you know the truth. You cannot break a woman who gets her strength from God. I'll be back with you next week, and I hope you have a great day. Okay. It is pointing you out. Nope. I'm so tall now. We'll see how it goes.